Like every conflict before, the war in Vietnam sucked a whole generation of men into its violent grinder, and they were all no doubt changed by the experience. But a surprising number who made it through went on to make their mark in Hollywood, sports, and even the literary world. Here are just a few of the most famous.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Now imagine Pat Sajak saying that, because he actually did. Sajak served in Vietnam for 18 months, first as a file clerk and then as a military DJ, where he used Adrian Cronauer's famous phrase, as Robin Williams so memorably performed for us. So how did he manage to score such a sweet job in the middle of such an awful war? He told the New York Times, "I had never actually been a DJ, but I made it sound to the Army guys like I had. I think I lied, actually." When he arrived on his first day, Sajak was in for a surprise. As he recalled, "The DJ played Spanish music, did Spanish commercials, and I would read the news in English. To this day, I do not know why. Then the guy would leave at 2, so from then on I would play records. I don't know what they were." In an article for the USO, Sajak said that his job evoked mixed feelings, saying, "I used to feel a bit guilty about my relatively soft duty. After all, I was billeted in a hotel and there were plenty of nice restaurants around. But I always felt a little better when I met guys who came into town from the field and thanked us for bringing them a little bit of home." Uncle Phil was in Nam. Before becoming an actor, James Avery joined the Navy. In an interview with the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, Avery explained how after fighting with his mother over the restrictions she had put on him, he had an idea.
Because I didn't like people giving me orders, being the brilliant 18-year-old that I was, I joined the military.
While this might seem like a dumb decision, it's possible that joining the Navy saved Avery's life. In an interview with the Vietnam Veterans of America, he explained, "2 weeks after I was in boot camp, a letter came to my mother saying I was drafted into the Army. I dodged that bullet." Being in the Navy meant Avery was less likely to see combat than if he was in the Army. He served for 4 years. There's very little publicly available information about Avery's time in the military, likely because he was allegedly involved in covert operations in Laos and Cambodia, and during the Tet Offensive. Still, he wasn't entirely opposed to talking about his experiences. After Avery died in 2013, a producer who worked with him wrote on his blog that on set, Avery would tell stories of his time in Vietnam between takes. You know him best as Detective Andy Sipowicz on NYPD Blue. Dennis Franz graduated college in 1968 with a theater degree and then signed up to fight in Vietnam. He told Military.com, "I was curious about the military service and went into the Army.
When you go from civilian life to a war zone, nobody on the planet can tell you what it's like."
It might have been innocent curiosity that got him into the situation, but it quickly became more serious. The reality of combat profoundly affected him. Franz recalled, "I'm not as frivolous as I once was. I experienced death over there and losing friends. I got as close to being shot as I care to. I could feel and hear bullets whizzing over my head. That shakes you up quite a bit." Like many veterans of the controversial war, Franz has mixed feelings about the whole thing. He even considered going AWOL at one point. The Tet Offensive took place during his 11-month tour in Vietnam, which meant he saw some of the worst fighting of the entire conflict. The reality of getting shot at chased away any ethical qualms.
You just want to be out of the situation, and the only way to get out of it is to shoot back and make somebody stop and let me get out of it.
Richard Chaves is most famous for his role as Jorge Pancho Ramirez in Predator. His father was an officer in the Marines, so when he was assigned a low draft number, he decided to face the inevitable head-on. Chaves joined the Army in 1970 and served 1 tour in Vietnam. In a 1989 interview with Starlog magazine, he said, "Sometimes you remember things you wish you didn't. You did what you were told. The war would have been over much quicker, but they wouldn't let us do it the right way. We didn't have any say." Vietnam would end up shaping the rest of Chavez's life. His acting career began when he co-wrote and starred in a play about Vietnam vets called Tracers. The show was a huge hit. Chaves explained, "We sat around and wrote it based on our own experiences. Everybody came to see the play. Stanley Kubrick, Jon Voight, Oliver Stone. I've been told by these people that our play influenced all subsequent movies about Vietnam." Chaves would go on to star in many other Vietnam War-related shows and movies. And even when projects weren't directly about the war, he felt the weight of it. While filming Predator, he remembers, "When we were out there in the jungle, it was just like being back in Vietnam, for the most part, both physically and emotionally." Harris Hurley Haywood would eventually become a champion race car driver by winning some of the toughest events in the world, including the famous 24-hour Le Mans 3 times. But just as his career was beginning, he received his draft notice. His family had enough influence to get him out of military service, but he chose to go to Vietnam. Speaking of men's health, he said, "I was drafted in 1970 and I had a very low number, so I was shipped overseas. I spent most of my tour telling everyone how I wanted to get back home and drive race cars." Haywood chooses to see the positives of his war service, crediting the situational awareness he gained from being shot at with making him a better driver. In an interview with the Department of Defense, he explained how war also forced him to learn to rapidly adapt to changing conditions, saying, "It's the same thing in the military. If you get too locked into one thing, you're not going to be able to react quickly enough. I think that when I came back to the States in 1971 and started racing, I had a huge advantage over my peers at that point because I didn't have that experience." Rocky Bleier, Steelers legend and four-time Super Bowl champ, had already been drafted by the Steelers when the Army sent him their own draft notice. Soon, Bleier headed to basic training and then to Vietnam. In August 1969, Bleier took both a bullet and a grenade to the leg, earning a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart.
All of a sudden, I felt a thud in my left leg, and it started to burn and bled, and I was hit for the first time.
On a visit to the Pentagon decades later, he said, "We pray that we come back from war. We have to live with the scars, both visible and invisible. We have to live with the trauma. We have to live with what happens during that period of time." Bleier's injuries were so bad that he lost part of his foot. Doctors told him to give up football, but Bleier didn't listen. Not only would he play football again, but he would go on to be unbelievably successful at it, something he credits partly to his time in the Army. He told the National Guard, "I talk a lot about structure and fundamentals and what happens in changing environments. It's really those basic fundamentals that football teaches you and life teaches you. The military teaches you the same thing." In the 1960s, film director Oliver Stone went to South Vietnam to teach for a year, but when it was over, he didn't feel like he'd learned enough, so he enlisted in the Army. Stone told students at San Diego State University, "I felt like I had to go to this war to understand it. I had to go back. I had already seen a bit of it from the fringes, but I went right into the heart of it in '67. Stone saw a lot of action in the war. In his memoir, he recounted what it was like being under fire, sheltering from massive bombs, and seeing men die next to him. He was wounded twice during combat and received the Bronze Star with valor. Stone's Vietnam experiences would affect his future work, especially his film Platoon, which is considered by many to be one of the most accurate war movies ever made.
I wanted them to feel the idea that, incarnate the idea that you don't sleep over there. You wanted young guys who got old fast.
The film's technical advisor was retired Marine Captain Dale Dye, who also appeared in the movie. In an interview with the Department of Defense, Dye said, "We had employed actual Vietnamese refugees that we'd found in the Philippines, and being surrounded by extras shrieking and conversing in Vietnamese brought us both right back to Nam." When future best-selling thriller author Nelson DeMille received his draft notice, it wasn't clear how bad the Vietnam War was going to get. Coming from a military family, he was fine with the idea of serving overseas for a year. Reality was far different. In an interview with the American Legion, DeMille explained that even before the most intense fighting of the war began, the experience was terrible, saying, "That January, before the Tet Offensive, temperatures dropped in the night into the 40s and 50s, and we had tropical clothing. It was raining. It was miserable." After the Tet Offensive, things got worse. In a single battle, DeMille lost 1/3 of his company. He recalled, "There was a sense of unreality in a foreign country with people shooting at you. It's hard to believe what you were seeing. Dead bodies on the road and people just passing by them. It's a shock." DeMille earned the Bronze Star and was injured 3 times. It's clear the experience made an indelible impression. Of DeMille's 23 books, 4 dealt with the war or Vietnam vets. After accepting a magazine assignment almost 4 decades after leaving Vietnam, DeMille returned with some other veterans, an experience he found surreal. Al Gore was the son of a famous anti-war senator who was up for re-election. The younger Gore was also against the war and had joined anti-war protests during his years at Harvard. Still, he chose to join the Army. Gore went to Vietnam as a military journalist, although he was known to risk his life to interview troops on the front lines. Michael Roach, his editor at the military newspaper, told the New York Times, "Anybody who knew Al Gore in Vietnam knows he could have sat on his butt, and he didn't." While there's no question that Gore went above and beyond to talk to soldiers, there are some disagreements about just how much danger he was actually in. He told the Times, "I carried a pencil and a loaded M16A1 outside the base camp, and I worked in areas where I had to be armed. I wasn't shot at, but I was in areas where there was firing."
Hey, brother, how many times you been up and down this hill? What are you doing here?
Whatever happened, Gore later said that his experience in a war zone made him feel more alive than anything else ever had.